Jai Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hare Krishna. Are we going to require a translator? How many? There will be translation happening. Okay. Is it going to be that me speaking and you're going to repeat?
No, you can.
I can just freely continue.
Simultaneously. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, chapter number 1, entitled The Advent of Lord Krishna, Introduction. And this is text number 56. Please repeat. Atakala upavrite.
Atakala upavrite.
Atakala upavrite.
Atakala upavrite.
Devaki sarvadevata.
Devaki sarvadevata.
Devaki sarvadevata.
Devaki sarvadevata.
Putram prasupte chasto.
Putram prasupte chasto.
Putram prasusuvat chasto.
Putram prasupte chasto.
Kanyam chaivanu vatsaram.
Kanyam chaivanu vatsaram.
Kanyam chaivanu vatsaram.
Kanyam chaivanu vatsaram.
Atakala upavrite.
Atakala upavrite.
Devaki sarvadevata.
Devaki sarvadevata.
Putram prasusuve chasto.
Putram prasupte chasto.
Kanyam chaivanu vatsaram.
Kanyam chaivanu vatsaram.
Prabhu's.
Atakala upavrite.
Atakala upavrite.
Devaki sarvadevata.
Devaki sarvadevata.
Putran prachuve chasto.
Putram prasupte chasto.
Kanyam chaivanu vatsaram.
Kanyam chaivanu vatsaram. Atakala upavrite. Devaki sarvadevata. Putram prasupte chasto. Kanyam chaivanu vatsaram.
Atakala upavrite.
Atakala upavrite.
Devaki sarvadevata.
Devaki sarvadevata.
Putran prasushume chasto.
Putram prasupte chasto.
Kanyam chaivanu vatsaram.
Kanyam chaivanu vatsaram.
Ladies.
Athakala upavrite.
Atakala upavrite.
Devaki sarvadevata.
Devaki sarvadevata.
Putran prasushube chasto.
Putram prasupte chasto.
Kanyam chaivanuvatsaram.
Kanyam chaivanu vatsaram.
Atakala upavrite.
Atakala upavrite.
Devaki sarvadevata.
Devaki sarvadevata.
Putram prasusuve chasto.
Putram prasupte chasto.
Kanyam chaivanu vatsaram.
Kanyam chaivanu vatsaram.
Word by word. Ata.
Ata.
Thereafter.
Thereafter.
Kale.
Kale.
In due course of time.
In due course of time.
Upavrite.
Upavrite.
When it was ripe.
When it was ripe.
Devaki.
Devaki.
Devaki, the wife of Vasudev, Krishna's father. Sarvadevata.
Sarvadevata.
Devaki, to whom all the demigods and God himself appeared. Putran. Sons. Prasusuve. Gave birth to. Cha. And. Asto. 8. Kanyam. Cha. And one daughter named Subhadra. Eva. Indeed. Anuvatsaram,
Anuvatsaram,
year after year.
year after year.
Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
Jai.
Translation. Each year thereafter, in due course of time, Devaki, the mother of God, and all the demigods gave birth to a child. Thus she bore 8 sons, one after another, and a daughter named Subhadra. Please repeat. Each year thereafter,
Each year thereafter,
in due course of time,
in due course of time,
Devaki,
Devaki,
the mother of God,
the mother of God,
and all the demigods,
and all the demigods,
gave birth to a child.
gave birth to a child.
Thus she bore 8 sons,
Thus she bore 8 sons,
one after another,
one after another,
and a daughter named Subhadra.
and a daughter named Subhadra.
Purport. The spiritual master is sometimes glorified as Sarva Deva Mayo Guru. Bhagavatam, 11th canto, chapter 7, verse 27. By the grace of the Guru, the spiritual master, one can understand the different kinds of devas. The word deva refers to God, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the original source of all the demigods, who are also called devas. In Bhagavad Gita 10.2, the Lord says, Aham Adir Hi Devanam, I am the source of all the devas. The Supreme Lord Vishnu, the original person, expands in different forms. Tat Aikshata Bahusyam, Chandogya Upanishad 6.2.3. He alone has expanded into many. Advaita Machuta Manadi Mananta Rupam, Brahma Samhita 5.33. There are different grades of forms known as Swamsa and Vibhin Amsa. The Swamsa expansions or Vishnu Tattva are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whereas the Vibhin Amsa are Jiva Tattva, who are part and parcel of Lord. Mama Imamshu Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. If we accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and worship Him, all the parts and expansions of the Lord are automatically worshipped. Sarva Bhanam Achuteja. Srimad Bhagavatam 4:31-14. Krishna is known as Achyuta. Senaro Uphayor Madhye Rabdhan Sthapaya Achyuta. By worshipping Achyuta, Krishna one automatically worships all the demigods. There is no need of separately worshipping either Vishnu Tattva or Jiva Tattva. If one concentrates upon Krishna, one worships everyone. Therefore, because Mother Devaki gave birth to Krishna, she is described here as Sarva Devata. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakayam Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Ata kale upavrite devaki sarva devata putram prasu suvechasto kanyam jaiva nuvatsaram. Each year thereafter, in due course of time, Devaki, the mother of God, and all the demigods gave birth to a child. Thus she bore 8 sons, one after another, and a daughter named Subhadra. Before I start, I would like to request the blessings of all the assembled Vaishnavas, senior Vaishnavas, peers, and those which are juniors, for the blessings to approach Srimad Bhagavatam and the elaborate Bhaktivedanta purports, and hopefully establish what is already established and preserved, and share something which is practical and hopefully helpful to all of us. Please accept my humble obeisances. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha, kripa sindhu vacha, patitana pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. So one mantra which I would like to share with you, and is the mantra which I
Donc,
meditate on quite frequently,
que j'aimerais
is,
partager avec vous,
and those who know me, they know that this is a famous quotation which I like to use, is, again, from subtle to gross. From subtle to
on
gross.
part du subtil vers le brut, vers le grossier.
So when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, when
Lorsqu'on
we
lit le Srimad
read
Bhagavatam,
scriptures,
Lorsqu'on étudie
we should
les
not only
passages,
see the flow of the text,
on doit comprendre
but we should
non
also
seulement
see
le
the
flow
subtle
de la narration,
connotation behind.
mais aussi comprendre les connotations qu'il y a derrière.
Here we can see how
On voit ici
something of great value in the
quelque chose de
material
transcendant
world
ici,
has also great value in the spiritual realm equally.
et ça a
And
également
one thing
une
which I was
importance
deciding to
importante
speak on
au
today
niveau spirituel.
is actually something which we all have in a certain proportion.
Et on a donc tous ceci,
Even those which are on a spiritual platform have this impetus
on a
equally.
tous un impétus
Their impetus is coming from a different realm, and our impetus is coming from a different
vient
realm.
de différentes sources.
And one thing which I wish
que
to
ce
speak
soit
on today is
original
actually
ou spirituel.
fear.
La peur.
So fear is a very interesting concept.
La peur est un concept intéressant.
Fear can be a great motivator,
Ça peut être un motivateur,
but fear can be a great debilitating aspect as
ça
well.
peut aussi être débilitant.
Fear allows to rise to occasion,
La
but
peur
simultaneously,
se
fear can be very crippling
projette
as
par
well.
moment.
And one interesting thing about fear is depends where it's coming from, where it
La
comes
peur,
from.
par contre, on doit considérer d'où vient
So
elle.
there's a interesting story.
Il y a
There's
une
an
histoire
interesting
intéressante,
pastime,
un divertissement
sort of
intéressant.
presented by, or interesting analogy presented by
Mm.
Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur.
Intéressante, représentée par Vishwanath
So,
Chakravarti.
All of you know Vishwanath Chakravarti
Vous
Thakur
connaissez
is,
tous Vishwanath Chakravarti.
is considered one of the Rasa Acharyas.
C'est un des Rasa Acharyas.
He had unbelievable insight into
Yeah,
varieties
yeah,
of
yeah.
pastimes in Krishna Lila.
Une perception
And those of you who
unique
read the commentaries of
Yes.
like
des
Sartha
Rasa
Darshanika,
Acharyas.
you can tell that he can enter
Il peut
the
pénétrer
mind and the
Mm.
conversations to a degree that you can say that he was present there.
il peut pénétrer
He narrates the mind of Krishna, narrates the mind of Balaram,
absolument
narrates the mind of Mother Yashoda, Mother Devaki, Vasudeva, and all these individual participants. So I would like to share one interesting concept which Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur shares in his commentaries.
Vishwanath partage dans son commentaire.
Those of you who know material cosmos has different layers
Le
of
cosmos a
creation.
différents
And if I said from subtle to gross
Lorsqu'on
is
parle
the mantra of creation.
vers le brut, vers le grossier,
So can anyone tell me what is one of the very important, I dare to say, the most subtle of all elements of creation?
Akash, Itra,
That's one of the 5 elements, yes. But even beyond the Akash is Ahankar, false ego.
Donc,
Correct. And the manifestation of Ahankar is actually the mind.
l'élément
And the manifestation of the
c'est-
mind
c'est
is
la
a demigod
c'est
called Marichi. So the demigod called Marichi
Maharishi est un des
had
dieux.
6 sons.
Il avait 6 fils.
These 6 sons are
Six
very
fils et 6 fils.
predominant in the age of Kali.
Ces 6 fils sont
They're very strongly
connus
rooted
dans l'âge
in the
de
society and in the consciousness of all the
Ils
individuals.
sont profondément
on the
ancrés
present
dans la
day and
conscience
age.
de tout un chacun ici-bas.
These 6 sons have a very interesting names.
Et ces 6 fils ont des noms intéressants.
Their names were Kama,
Kama,
Krodha,
Claude,
Lobha,
Claude.
Moha, Mada, and Matsarya.
Voici leurs 6 noms.
So I'll translate what their names actually mean. They mean lust, anger,
Confiance,
greed,
colère,
illusion,
avarice, illusion,
madness, and envy.
folie.
These are the 6 sons
Ce sont
of
des
the mind.
fils- Ce sont des fils du mental.
These 6 sons, they manifested
Ils se
themselves
manifestent de
throughout the history in varieties of ways.
dans différentes façons.
As I said, they are the sons of Marichi.
Ce sont les fils de
They've been
Maharishi.
grandsons of Hiranyakashipu.
C'était les grands fils.
I think
les
they
fils
got
de
cursed.
Maharishi. Ils furent maudits.
Cursed in such a way
De telle
that
façon
they will be killed by their own
qu'ils
father.
seraient tués par leur propre père.
The reason why I'm all saying this is because within this whole section, their pastime is encoded.
Parce que
Can anyone tell me the cumulative name of these 6 personalities? Sadgarbhas. So these Sadgarbhas, they are the 6 sons of Mother Devaki.
ce sont
Right?
les 6 fils de Devaki.
These 6 sons manifested themselves in the womb of Devaki. The 7th son was Sankarshan,
Le 7e était Shankar.
and the 8th son was Krishna
Le
himself.
8e c'était Shankar.
So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur draws very interesting analogy out of this whole manifestation and birth of Krishna.
Par rapport à la naissance de Krishna,
Mother Devaki, she represents Bhakti personified.
Bhakti personnifié.
Kamsa
Kams
represents
représente
the materialistic way of living.
la façon de l'existence matérielle en fait.
And the impetus of a devotee
L'impetus du dévot,
is that he's actually afraid of material lifestyle,
il a peur
He's
de
very much
l'existence
afraid
matérielle.
of being connected with the material way of
Il a
living.
peur d'être connecté d'une manière ou d'une autre à l'existence matérielle.
In the progress of investment of Vaishnava's attention, it starts with
Et
fear of
lorsqu'on
God,
considère
duty towards
le
God.
progrès
We end up
par
on
rapport
the
à
last
la charge,
stages for love of
pour
God.
le devoir,
So many times we think that fear is
consiste
very
à
debilitating,
prendre refuge en Krishna.
but at the same time, if it's progressed correctly, if it's directed correctly, it can be a great impetus to
Ça
act.
peut être un très bon impetus en soi.
Can anyone recall when they've been studying during high school or during
Est-ce que
university
vous
times,
vous étiez à l'école,
the fear of exam
la peur des examens par exemple,
was the greatest impetus for you to actually sit down and study?
quel était l'impetus
People all around the globe, they heard the terminology stress.
pour pouvoir
Have you heard of
étudier?
stress before? I did. I do. But stress is just a sort of an active element. And the
Le
real
stress en soi est un acte-
real thing is how do we react to this
Comment
stress?
réagir au
So in
stress.
psychology there's something called eustress.
Donc ça s'appelle le
So
eustress. En
eustress means
psychologie,
that this is useful stress.
c'est un stress qui est pratique.
Useful stress means that when you're under pressure, you're able to achieve much more.
On peut accomplir.
So same thing with fear.
Même chose
When
avec
you're
la peur.
fearless, that's when
Lorsque
you
la peur,
squeeze, when you churn, when you press,
lorsqu'on barate,
that's when the juice comes
on
out.
presse,
There's the saying, right?
la-
Diamonds are made
Par
under,
exemple, chez les diamants,
diamonds are made under pressure.
les diamants.
My spiritual master, His Holiness Kadambakana Maharaj, he always used to say, everyone wants to squeeze the orange.
Tout le monde
Maharaj was
veut
very
presser
obviously saffron rose, which sometimes have the color of orange. And he said to us, wherever I go, people just want to squeeze the orange. People want to squeeze and get the rasa out. People want to get the relationship out. People want to get the most out of sannyasis. So everyone is here just to squeeze the orange.
Ils veulent des sannyas, ils veulent absolument
So whatever you desire in life,
du sannyas.
some pressure is needed and some pressure is required.
Donc, il y a tout
But
un
it's
tas
your
de
choice.
pression.
How are you going to react to that
Comment
pressure?
allez-vous réagir à cette pression?
Therefore, we can see here that the fear of
La peur
Mother
de
Devaki
Mère Devaki
is transcendental fear of
est
Kamsa,
hyper
who
transcendantale
represents
de Kamsa,
the materialistic attributes.
l'existence matérielle des attributs.
And when this fear of material life
Et
is
lorsque
present,
cette peur de l'existence matérielle est présente,
these 6 sons of Marichi,
ses fils, ses
lust,
fils,
anger, greed, illusion, madness, and envy,
puissance, colère,
they start losing their ground.
etc. Eh bien, ils perdent leurs pieds.
And interesting enough, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur continues in his analogy that when this fear of material life is present, the 7th incarnation or the 7th son is Guru. The 7th son becomes Balaram, the strength personified. Srila Prabhupada in his purport connects, the spiritual master is sometimes glorified as Sarva Deva Mayo Guru. By the grace of the Guru, the spiritual master, one can understand the different kinds of devas. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Sarvasya chaham hridi sanimishta matta smriti jnanam apohanam cha vedascha sarvam aham eva vedyo vedanta krit vedavid eva chaham. In the 15:15, Krishna states
Donc,
that
15-15,
he's the conclusion of all the wisdom, of
c'est la
all the
conclusion
knowledge.
de tous les Védas.
So similarly, Krishna is the source, the potency, and the energy of all the devas.
L'énergie de tous les dieux.
Thus, practically speaking for us,
Donc, pratiquement parlant,
if we desire to establish
si on veut
relationship with
établir
Krishna,
une relation avec
we
Krishna,
should have to a certain degree
on
fear
devrait-
of a fall down,
on devrait avoir
fear
peur de
of
tomber.
frivolously engaging in frivolous
La
activities with the
peur de
material world.
s'engager dans les activités frivoles, par
How
exemple.
they say, flirting with the material energy.
Flirter
The
avec
more you
l'énergie,
flirt with material energy, the more possibility of fall down is there.
plus on flirte
So
avec
here we
la
can
planète,
see
plus
how
il y a de chances que-
Abhaya, or fearful state of consciousness, can be utilized
Donc,
in a correct fashion and in a right way.
dominé par la peur,
So in Krishna consciousness, even fear can be utilized.
au service de Krishna.
On the spiritual level,
Au niveau spirituel,
the gopis, they've been afraid
les gopis eurent peur
when Krishna was dancing on the hoods
lorsque
of
Krishna
Kaliya.
sur les-
But this transcendental fear was utilized to churn the rasa.
Mais
So this
cette
fear
peur
was utilized to bring some more essence and more relationship between Krishna and the gopis.
pour, comment dirais-je, churning,
So when you read the Prabhupada's purport,
pour barater
it's
les
very
choses,
strongly emphasizing the position of Krishna. It's very strongly emphasizing that he is not just a regular personality.
Donc c'est pas juste une personne.
Prabhupada is citing varieties of verses from Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Chandogara Upanishad, and Brahma Samhita, saying that Krishna is above regular personalities.
Est au-delà de la peur.
So, on a completely other note, when you travel on book distribution on Sankirtan, one of the very predominant feature in the modern society is actually personalism. Even those who claim personal God, they never establish personal relationship. And as I mentioned in the beginning, from subtle to gross, what is the fear of personal relationship with God? Let me ask you differently. What we can get on a positive spectrum from a personal relationship between one person and another.
Positivement d'une relation personnelle avec quelqu'un.
Any takes? Comforts?
Care.
Yes?
Care.
Care? Love?
L'amour,
Security? What positive effects you can get out of not having relationships?
Qu'est-ce que vous pouvez retirer
Peacefulness.
d'une relation
Peacefulness.
qui est impersonnelle? La paix,
Responsibility and expectations.
responsabilité.
Yes. If you have no relationship with anyone, there's no responsibilities towards anyone
S'il n'y a pas
and
de
no
relation,
expectations
il n'y a
from
pas
anyone.
d'attente, il n'y a pas de responsabilité.
Any other takes?
Y a-t-il autre chose?
सर्वधर्मान परित्यज्य
Would you like to expound on that?
सर्वधर्मान परित्यज्य
No, so it means surrender.
Yes.
So you don't have to surrender to anyone. You don't have to put anyone in the
Donc
forefront.
j'ai pas besoin
Okay.
de s'abandonner puisqu'on n'a pas de relation avec quiconque.
Ramananda Roy would say that the loss of the company of the devotee would be the worst for a devotee.
For a devotee, the worst thing in material life or in life in general
Le
is to
pire pour un
not
dévot,
having a relationship or association with other
la compagnie
Vaishnavas.
des dévots.
The reason why I brought this up is
La raison pour laquelle j'ai
if you look at the positivity of personal relationship and the positivity of not having a relationship,
la positivité d'avoir
people
une
are burned
relation
out in
personnelle,
this modern society.
personnelle,
People are burned out.
les gens
Therefore, their
sont-
concepts represent their stage of consciousness. The concepts of approaching God represents how they feel about everything in their material life.
Comment ils ressentent les choses au niveau matériel.
One of the interesting ways Prabhupada was dealing with Mayavadis is that he was actually angry, but at the same time he understood that these personalities want to finish and negate the material life, and that's their impetus to go back to spiritual world. Imagine life after life, you're being burned out. Life after life, you've been put down by relationship with others. Life after life, you've been forsaken. Life after life, you've been neglected. And life after life, the rasa, the mellow, the love is missing. So literally Mayavad concept is almost a natural result to material life. But it's incorrect.
C'est un résultat matériel
Do you get the point?
qui provient.
The reason why Srila Prabhupada is giving all these varieties of sources is saying that God will not lose His majesty, His opulence and His strength just for the sake when He reciprocates with His devotees as a mother and a son.
Son côté majestique et majestueux.
God is not just some impersonal blob manifesting to a person. No. God is the person. And goal is to have relationships. That's why Srila Prabhupada's mantra, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatari. These two aspects are the greatest things that the Vaishnavas, Gaudiya Vaishnavas are fighting against. His Grace Jai Gopal Prabhu, when we traveled to Amsterdam, he gave us these big bags of Krishna books. He said, we got great sponsorship of Krishna books, distribute them to anyone and everyone when we've been in Amsterdam and Netherlands. And the reason he said to me, they have some philosophical understanding, but they think God is not a person. And Krishna book is the greatest ammunition to fight against this misconception, against this impersonal conception of spirituality. And I found that really, really profound. So presenting pastimes about Krishna, establishing Krishna as a son, as a friend, as a lover, as a mischievous boy, is actual way to fight Nirvishesha and Shunyavadi. So we should see fear is a natural position of a soul in the material world. Being afraid of relationship, being afraid of love, being afraid to love. But fear on a spiritual level is a transcendental activity. But on a spiritual level, fear cannot happen again without relationships. Therefore, naturally, to have a fear in a spiritual level means that Krishna is a person, I'm a person, and we are afraid for each other in the most positive way possible. Does it make sense? So fear in the material world, the fuel of that is the lack of rasa, or disturbance between people. Fear on the spiritual plane is to intensify the rasa. So I'm not going to speak too much, I just try to explain this small little point. The impetus of material life is fear, and the impetus of spiritual life is also fear, but that fear is transcendental. So we narrated small pastime of the Marichi and the Sadgarbhas, and how the material fear is impetus for someone to actually develop relationship with Krishna, if it's directed correctly, and how Guru prepares the foundation for Krishna to appear in the heart of a Vaishnava. Any questions? Any points? Any comments? Any reflections? Yes?
In Nectar of Devotion, one of the secondary rasas is this fearfulness. It has another name. I don't know the Sanskrit. So could you elaborate how does that secondary rasa relates to each of the main rasas, and how does that nourish relationship and love?
Very interesting question. So the 5 principal rasas are rasa of neutrality. One disclaimer, there's no neutrality in Goloka Vrindavan. Even it is said that cows are neutral, or flute is neutral, or the trees are neutral. But if you carefully study Srimad Bhagavatam, you can understand that that's not the case. In friendship, the cowherd boy's been afraid for Krishna when he was obviously performing varieties of pastimes like killing Aghasura. And Krishna was afraid for them. Mother Yashoda was constantly fearful, what is Krishna up to? and what are his activities.
Et Krishna aussi avait peur pour
And as a lover, the gopis been constantly afraid that Krishna may abandon them. So ultimately, fear was a great spark or fuel to actually churn and develop higher sentiments for Krishna.
Donc ça va développer des sentiments plus profonds encore.
You can translate this fear also as a pressure.
Donc la peur est
And as I said, diamonds are made under pressure, and under pressure everything comes out.
Donc sous la
So in the spiritual world, if pressure is applied, what comes out is a higher sentiment.
Donc en fait, ce qui va ressortir de
I remember when I was in Vrindavan and my spiritual master was leaving the body,
plus de sentiments.
I was afraid. I was afraid what will happen to my spiritual life, what happens with him, what happens to him. And within that moment of fearful state, you can actually find a higher sentiments and higher appreciation,
Lorsque j'étais à Vrindavan,
more value.
j'avais peur.
For those of you who have spiritual masters, Prabhupada was emphasizing that one of the reasons why we chant Nishingadev prayers is actually for the protection of our Guru.
Par exemple, lorsqu'on a peur,
So when we chant Nishingadev prayers, it's not only for us,
donc
but also for the protection of our Guru.
est là pour
And if we don't care for anyone, how can we ask for protection of someone?
si
So,
on veut protéger quelqu'un.
yeah, fear is a
Vous pouvez
great
utiliser
active
le
element in our lives. But to which degree is positive or negative,
à
that
quel
depends
degré,
upon you.
positif ou négatif, va-t-on,
Prabhupada presented this concept of pavarga and apavarga.
ça dépend de votre conscience.
And one of those vargas,
Apavarga,
varga basically means field or context. And one of those
Varga
fields is bhaya
contexte.
or fear.
Un des contextes, c'est bhaya, la peur.
So pavarga means material illusion or being materially sort of entangled. And apavarga means not being entangled.
Donc, apavarga, ça veut
So
dire ne pas être
these
empêtré.
two are contradictory to each other.
Et pavarga, ça veut dire ne pas être empêtré.
Sorry for not answering directly the question. Any other points? Karan?
Yeah, the word by fears has very different senses. We can see that in the Vedic scriptures, they speak of
La peur
people who
est
are
un
fearing
concept
God, meaning people
qui est
who
très large.
are responsible of their activities and who are pious to some extent. You know. On another side, we see that Prabhupada was seeing that devotees were not enough fearful of my.
Si la Prabhupada nous disait souvent,
He said,
les gens n'ont pas cette peur de
This is
Maya.
not a good symptom because we don't realize how powerful is Maya. So also we see that Srila Prabhupada was named Abhay Charahina.
Si la Prabhupada s'appelle Abhay,
He was Abhay fearless
il a
because he
dit
was
sans
born
peur.
in his preaching. He didn't care who was
Il a pas eu
thinking
peur
this
de
way
quoi
of
que ce soit.
preaching is too hard or too strong or whatever, or the religious principle are not so being impressed on, and people were thinking, oh, it's too heavy. When he was in Paris, the devotee
Lorsque
were
Prabhupada était à
quite
Paris,
fearful
par
because
exemple,
he was so bold that the mayor was here and he was boldly preaching, and the
Il a rencontré
devotee
le maire de
were
Paris.
felt uncomfortable, and everybody else also. He would feel, oh, is he preaching so boldly?
Mais
So
si la Prabhupada
like
avait,
that we can have
on le
some
sait,
different
il fait de manière
estimation of
très
the war.
bourrée, hein, de manière
Fear,
très
religious.
parfois.
The same word, but we have so
Très
many
franc.
different
Il n'est pas
qualities
peur
and
des conséquences.
signification in the context of Krishna consciousness.
Very wonderfully presented, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Yeah. So fear is an important aspect in devotional life,
Donc la peur est un
but it should not be
aspect
crippling
personnel.
aspect. just as Prabhu explained that Prabhupada is Abhay Charana Aravinda, fearless at the lotus feet of the Lord. But at the same time, Prabhupada was praying that may I never fall into the grasp of Maya. And as Prabhupada narrated one interesting point, he said, my disciples are not enough afraid of material life. So to a certain degree, it is important to have that fear. Yes?
Donc, d'un certain degré, c'est important d'avoir une
Yes, I would like to ask if it's then after this question, if it's possible to fear something that we don't know, because I don't know if I
Est-ce que c'est
have
possible
good
d'avoir peur de
understanding
l'inconnu?
about what you said, but sometimes I feel that the fear is uncertainty.
Uncertainty.
Yes,
De
and
la peur peut provenir
so
de
that means that
l'incertitude,
we are
du manque de
in a mode of
uncertainty.
passion or in a mode of ignorance. So I think that perhaps sometimes the fear, when we said fear, is something like that we are not sure about what is going to happen to us. And this is what Prabhupada was saying, that actually we have to know what we can pass through. So yeah, my question is, if we can fear something that we don't know.
How we can fear something we don't know. Fear of an
Comment avoir
uncertainty.
peur de quelque chose qu'on ne connaît pas?
Fear also hand in hand goes in faith. That because I've engaged myself in the practice of Krishna consciousness,
Donc,
because I'm
la peur
surrounded by Vaishnavas, and ultimately I practice devotional service, there's also faith
la conscience de Krishna,
that
la compagnie des dévots,
Krishna
la
will
pratique.
provide his facilities and Krishna will provide the
Krishna
help.
nous a, Srila Prabhupada nous a
So we counteract the material fear
cette protection
with investing
à
faith.
travers le mouvement ISKCON.
So in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's progress from Shraddha to Prema,
Dans le processus de
interesting concept is that when I was
Par
reading
rapport au Shraddha
in
jusqu'à
Jaiva
Prema,
Dharma, is that actual level of advancement in a heart of a devotee
Donc en fait,
is faith.
l'avancement du dévot,
So faith is not just the initial step,
la
but
foi
it's
n'est
a
pas juste
step
le dévot
which is
initial,
progressively going through all the
mais
different
la
stages.
foi va grandir.
So even
Au fur et
if
à
you
mesure de
participate in a sadhu
l'ascension
sangha,
des étapes.
or you know only on the stage of ruchi, and you develop taste, faith is constantly present,
Donc la foi s'accroît
which means
au fil de l'évolution.
that we should not allow sort of a fear to be a constant factor. Rather, we should redirect it towards
Donc,
developing
pas
faith.
de la peur,
And there are many
il faut
different
juste
levels how
la
to develop
rediriger
faith. Associating with
positivement.
Vaishnavas, reading the scriptures, developing Namaruchi. Lord Chaitanya established three
Donc,
sort of a principal
Namaruchi,
activities of Chaitanya Vaishnavism. Namaruchi, Jivadoy, Vaishnava Seva.
Jivadaya,
So these three
et Vaishnava
activities,
Seva,
ultimately
servir
they
les
lead to not being
dévots,
fearful.
protéger les dévots,
Fearful in the sense that
Namuchi, le saint.
the material world cannot bring no fear into our hearts. We can be still afraid for what will be the future of the deities. We can be afraid of what will be the future of the community. We'll be afraid of what will be the future of my Krishna Bhakti. But that source of fear is from a spiritual platform rather than from the material. So we're losing material fear, but still we develop that relationship with Krishna and maintaining that spiritual fear. The six Goswamis in Vrindavan, they send the deities to Rajasthan out of fear of the invaders,
Les Goswamis, par exemple, ont envoyé les
because they've been afraid for continuing worship of the Lord. But for themselves, whatever Krishna desires.
Mais c'est Krishna qui contrôle.
So they had fear for the Lord, they've been afraid for the Lord, but from themselves they understood that I'm
Et
whatever Krishna does. So faith on one level and fear on another one. I don't know if that makes sense.
So it's like the fear is we can learn from fear. It's kind of a pedagogy but actually we should not sustain our our faith in this pedagogy. We should sustain it in love.
On ne devrait pas.
Fear is the initial
Entretenir
impetus to
la
start
forme
Krishna
de-
Bhakti. The second step is duty, or dharma, and the third ultimately is bhakti. Hare Krishna.
In this regard, once there was here in New Mayapur, I had a nice realization on this because somebody came to Gandharvika, right, and was telling that the dog from the neighbors had escaped. He comes here sometimes, a big dog, and so this Mataji was coming to Mangalarti, and she saw these blinking eyes in the dark because there was no light, and she was very afraid. And then it was interesting because Gandharvika, right, Mataji told, oh yeah, I know that the dog came to me a few times and I'm not afraid. And that brought me a nice insight that we are afraid of because we don't know. Because she knew that it was a dog, she was not afraid. But this other lady who didn't know it was a dog, she was very afraid. And so actually the ignorance, the lack of knowledge is the original source of material fear.
Very nice, yeah, very nicely put. Vidya and avidya. Yes, Prabhu.
Actually, Shri Karabajan, he tells King Mimi in 1153, Bayam Ditya Dini Vishitasasyat Ishadapitasya Viparaya Smritihi. He explained the very concept of fear. As soon as you take shelter in something which is apparently different from Krishna, it's going to reverse your position. From Krishna, we're going to become Krishna, or even worse, Krishna's competitor. And the first outcome of that misconception is fear. According to Sri Karabarajan, who is one of the 9 Yogandhas, is speaking to King Nimi. So fear is the first outcome of taking shelter in something which is apparently different from Krishna, which is not possible. Nothing is separate from Krishna. But as soon as we take shelter of something which is apparently different from Krishna, fear comes out.
Very nicely said.
Asat is impermanent, so it's like
1153.
Okay, thank you so much. Very good point, yeah. With that said, thank you so much for your kind attention. Sorry I brought this seemingly distasteful topic. I don't have this gift of presenting rasic points. And thank you for your tolerance and for your patience. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitya Gaura Premanandi ki jai.
His Grace Antaranga Prabhu ki
jai.